Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar. In today's video, we're going to look at how to set up multi-currencies in a multi-entity shared environment. Sage Intacct allows you to manage multiple entities with multiple currencies. As you can see at the top of the company, we have what we call the top level. The top level is a container or an umbrella which includes one or more entities. It holds shared data that can be used among all entities, eliminating duplicating set of data in each entity. Some multi-entity companies require more than one base currency, particularly if most transactions in a given entity are in a different currency from the others. In such cases, you can set up multiple base currencies in your multi-entity environment, which enables entities to operate with different base currencies. You can use the consolidations module as well to consolidate the financial data of your entities while producing financial reports in a single currency. So when I click on the top level, these are all the entities that I have in this specific instance, meaning that you can manage entities from different regions or different countries that use different currencies in Sage Intacct. So now we're firstly going to enable multi-currency management. We go to Applications, Company, Admin, and Subscriptions. In your subscription page, you scroll down to the General Ledger and you click on Configure. On the Configure General Ledger page, you scroll down to multi-currency management and you enable multi-currency subscription. When you select this option, the multi-currency option is turned on in other applications, so as the other options for managing currencies and exchange rate. Please note that once you've enabled the multi-currency in a company, it's permanent. You can't switch it off at a later stage. As you can see in my company, multi-currency is already enabled and it's grayed out, meaning that I cannot turn it off. And the other thing to note is that you can only use the Intacct daily rate to convert the currency of transaction of less than 20 years in the past. So the Intacct daily rate is driven by Rwanda. That is where Sage Intacct gets the exchange rate from. So for companies with more than one entity in different regions, different countries, you'll have to enable multiple base currencies. So the base currency is the operating and reporting currency for the specific entity. Now we're going to enable multiple base currencies. You go to Applications, Company, Admin, Subscriptions, and you scroll down to multi-entity management and you configure. In the manage multiple entities, under entity settings, you enable multiple base currencies. And again, once you enable multiple base currencies, this is permanent and you won't be able to turn it off at a later stage. And because in my instance, it was already turned on, it's grayed out and I cannot change it. So once we've turned on the multi-currency and the multiple base currencies, we're going to create a rounding GL account. So the rounding account is mostly used when importing journal entries. So how it works is that during a journal entry import, transactions are converted to the base currency and rounded as required for that type of currency. If the rounding process causes the transaction to be out of balance, then Intacct tries to balance the debit or the credit line item automatically. And if there are any minor discrepancies that cannot be distributed across the line items, the discrepancies are added as a debit or a credit to the rounding account. That's why we need to add the rounding account. So it's basically for automatic balancing entries. So now to add the rounding GL account, we're going to add it on the fly in the configuration page. We go to Applications, General Ledger, Setup, and Configuration. In the Configure General Ledger page, we scroll down to Multi-Currency Management and we have a section where you can select the rounding account. So if you don't have the account added in the system while you were importing your chart of accounts, you can click on the drop down and click on add. And you can add or view this account, and this is the rounding account that has been added in this specific instance. So now that we have the rounding account added, we're going to set up the transaction currencies. I'm going to cancel here, and we navigate to applications, company, set up, and under multi-currency you go to transaction currencies. This is the list of the transaction currencies that has been added in this specific instance. So if there is a new currency that I want to add in my list of transaction currencies, I click on add, and in the currency and format setup, that's where you specify the currency information. In the currency section, you select the currency code. In the format, you select the country, the currency format, the currency unit, all the information for the currency. And under the currency sample, you verify if that is how you want the setup of your currency to be in your environment. And then you save. Once we have the currencies that we're going to use in our instance, we can now assign a currency to each bank account. Go to applications, cash management, all, and you go where you've added your accounts, either the credit card, savings account. I'm going to go to the current account. And for every bank account defined in Sage Intacct, you need to assign a default currency. Click on edit next to the bank account that you want to assign the currency. And on the current account information page, this account already has currency assigned to it. But if I click on add, and in the current account information, when I scroll down to currency and click on the drop down, I have a list of the currencies that has been added in this instance, and you save your bank account or you save the changes in the bank accounts. Once we've assigned currencies for the bank accounts, we are now going to select the foreign currency option per application. So if you know you're going to use foreign currencies in accounts receivable, you can define foreign currency transaction options per application. For example, you can enable foreign currency transaction in accounts payable and not in accounts receivable. So now I'm going to go to the accounts payable. If you go to applications, accounts payable, set up configurations, we scroll down to enable functionality, and you scroll down to enable creating, editing, and deleting foreign currency AP supplier invoices, and save your changes. And if you're going to use it in the order entry module, in the purchasing module, you go to purchasing, set up configurations. And in the enable functionality, you enable for foreign currency option, and you save the changes in your application. And if you'll be using the foreign currency option in your accounts receivable as well, you go to accounts receivable, set up, configure, and in the configure accounts receivable page, you scroll down to enable functionality, and you enable the foreign currency option for the accounts receivable. And you do this for all the applications that will be using foreign currency. So now that we've created the rounding GL account, we've set up the transaction currencies, and we've assigned a currency to each bank account, we've selected the foreign currency option per application, the following fields will appear after you've enabled your foreign currency. So I'm just going to quickly go to where you add your transaction, the invoice page, go to applications, accounts payable, all, and I'm going to click on the plus sign just next to AP supplier invoice. And in the AP supplier invoice page, when I scroll down to currency, I have the transaction currency, base currency, exchange rate date, exchange rate type, and exchange rate options. And all these fields appear just after you've enabled the foreign currency. So now we're going to just quickly go to the multiple base currency page. You go to applications, company, admin, subscriptions, and you scroll down to multi-entity management, and you click on configure. And on your entity settings, we have the multiple base currency enabled. And on the side, we have the value approval currency. So when you set a value approval currency for purchase transaction and expense reports, a value approval currency enables Sage Intacct to translate the transaction currency into a common currency. This common currency is used to evaluate transaction approval threshold and determine whether a transaction requires approval. And to set up the value approval currency, you click on the drop down, and only the currencies that you've added or enabled in Sage Intacct are available for selection. So you can select whichever currency that you want to set up the value approval for, and you click on save. And lastly, we're going to enable, or we're going to assign a currency for each entity. You go to applications, company, set up, entities. In the entities page, you will see a list of all the entities that you've added or that has been added in your instance, and you can click on edit just next to the entity. And when you scroll down to the accounting, you select the base currency for that specific entity. And that is how you will set up multi-currency and transact in multiple currencies in Sage Intacct.